There has been a lot of learning experiences that I have had. There are a lot of life lessons for me. So I have been in that situation several times. One thing that I have done was that I just dealt with it and ate the cost.
Right.
Which I think a lot of people have done, because how do you go back to your client and you tell them, well, I way underbid this.
Right. This is Small Business Celebration, where we introduce you to successful small business owners at their place of business so that you can learn something that you can use today to grow a strong and profitable business and get your next big breakthrough. You are our guest on Small Business Celebration this week?
I can be.
You don't look like Sarah.
Michael, that's not our guest.
You're not the guest, I'm the star of the show.
Welcome to another fantastic episode here on Small Business Celebration. We're going to be talking about how do you raise your prices in a service-based business. We're also going to be talking about how much do you charge for services. And to guide us through all this is Sarah Haggard, the owner of Deluge Consulting. Welcome to Small Business Celebration.
Thank you.
And for Visioneers who don't know who are you and what is it that you do?
My name is Sarah Haggard. I am owner and president of Deluge Consulting. We are a locally based stormwater management firm. We do specialize in erosion and sediment control, stormwater management, and air quality.
I have to begin. Deluge. I love the name. And for the Visioneers out there that don't know what a deluge is,
it's inundation of water over land. So I actually thought it up back in 2008 whenever I was like, oh, I'm gonna start a business. And I started looking online, what are other terms for erosion and stormwater and flood, and it just happened to pop up on pre-Google Ask Jeeves or one of those search engines.
Now, for the Visioneers out there who aren't familiar of the science, what is it that you specifically do for land developers, general contractors, and the like?
Relating it back to kind of science and everything, it is a little bit of soil science, it's a little bit of geomorphology and geology and hydrology.
Right.
It kind of ties in a lot of different sciences. It's very multidisciplinary. What we focus on is sedimentology and erosion.
When you talk about erosion, this is talking about commercial buildings, residential developments, and the like. Is that sort of thing? Or we're also talking about highways, freeways, we're talking about anything that has something or a building that needs to sit upon the earth?
Anything where you have to move dirt. So we have to move the dirt in order to put the buildings and get the foundation. Anytime you're moving the dirt for either buildings or wind turbines, oil and gas well pads, and highways. High-speed rail, they have a lot of people who do erosion and sediment control management there. And it's all very different depending on what kind of discipline or what kind of building you're working with.
How did you get into this business?
By happenstance.
Sure.
So I went to school over at Cal Poly for earth science, and I have a minor in soil science and land rehabilitation. And my professor was doing some research with Caltrans on erosion and sediment control. So I just happened to go to a conference. I went to 2 conferences that year.
Right.
I went to a soil science conference, which was pretty well academic. And then I went to a erosion and sediment control conference. And it was everybody under the sun that was there. It was great. It was so much fun. So I really fell in love with the industry whenever I went to the conference.
When you got involved in this business, what was the very first project that proved you could do this?
Well, I worked for a small consulting firm down out of Santa Clarita, but I would say that it was after that. I got let go from a commercial developer, and I kind of started out on my own. I had a buddy of mine out of Minnesota reach out and said, hey, we need a little bit of help. And so I wrote a plan. Didn't hear anything back from them because, you don't get kudos whenever you work for yourself.
Right.
And then they came back to me for another one. And so whenever they came back for that second one, that was where I was like, oh, okay, I can do this.
For the general contractor out there, or the land developer out there, or those that are looking for put in windmills, or a whole variety of things that you do, narrow down the various kinds of services that your firm provides.
So to start, we do stormwater management. We file for permits with the state.
Stormwater management is, where does the water go when it rains?
Yes, where does it go whenever it rains? Or if you happen to have a pipe leak or something, where is that water going to go? Mm-hmm. And making sure that we are not contributing to any kind of contamination of the project. So we have our dirt on our site. We want to keep that dirt there because one, that costs money, right?
Right.
And it costs money to grade that.
Right.
And so we don't want to have to go back and touch those slopes again or grade that area again. And that's why the erosion control is so important. And the sediment is not allowing the sediment off the project. So the permit that we work with is Section 402 of the Clean Water Act, and it is to prevent us from getting dirt off our project. It's so that we don't have dirt impacting our local waterways. And that is just one regulation that we work with. I mean, we deal with air quality as well. We do a portable generator permitting, we do a dust control plans and indirect source reviews. So we work with numerous aspects of air quality as well. So we kind of started with stormwater quality and providing expertise in stormwater quality and somebody who would not just kind of bail. A lot of our clients, I've gotten them from other people who have done services and then they just don't follow through. I found the biggest thing is answering the phone.
What? Consistency, reliability, follow through? Weird.
I know, right? I'm
And now you've got 22 employees because of it.
Yes, we've been able to support so many people within our community, which has made me feel great.
Paint us a picture on from what point of the project do you come in and what problems do you solve for the developer?
We are there from day one, from the very earliest part of the project. So a lot of the projects that we work with, we've been working with them years before they ever even start. Because it takes years to design and permit a project. And sometimes it may go on hold, things may change, definitions change. So now permits have to change. So we're there from the very, very beginning, most of the time, or somebody with my qualifications is, along with the engineering team, right? So we work hand in hand with an engineering team in order to develop the plans and to work together to make sure that the project is going to drain properly and that any kind of areas that we see might be addressed, any areas of concern. But we focus mainly on surface water. You have the rain and it drops onto the ground and it will flow off of the ground and come off the project and go into our rivers or our surface waters. But then you also have an aspect of it that infiltrates into the ground and goes into the groundwater. So we don't really do much with the groundwater. Everything is really kind of focused on the surface water. And the purpose of what we do, of the permit that we work with, is to allow the project to discharge that stormwater, but it can't have contaminants in it. So it can't have paint, it can't have dirt, it can't have concrete, it can't have, fertilizer, it can't have fertilizer,
Right.
Can't have any of those items in that. It has to be the same as whenever it fell onto your property, or at least as close as we can get to that. We use best management practices to minimize the contaminants that are coming off the project to the maximum extent practicable. We file for the permits, we develop the plans, and then we wait until the construction project starts. Sometimes that's a week, sometimes that's years.
Right.
And then we go through and we do inspections throughout the duration of construction in order to make sure that the plan is being implemented. And if there's any changes, that they are being addressed by the people who have written the plans. Sometimes it's us, sometimes it's other entities. And then you have other people who are educated in what we do that are installing those best management practices on the project. And then we are typically the ones to turn out the lights whenever we walk out the door, right? So we're the ones locking the door. We're at the very, very, very end of the project, sometimes the better end, the ones that are taking the photos of like, okay, project's done, and then we submit that to the state and we close out the permit. But that's for stormwater. Air quality is a little bit different. We develop the plans, we'll do some monitoring in the middle of construction, but it's not as intensive as the stormwater management for sure.
And if you're in a house that, well, they didn't follow Sarah's firm's guidance and you need a new house, might I suggest you reach out to Mike Saba, a Zillow Premier Agent with Watson Realty. Born and raised, never left Bakersfield. Give Mike Saba a call at 661-203-8406 or reach him at mikesaba1 at iCloud.com today. And if you've got a question, you've got a thought, something you'd like to learn about here on Small Business Celebration, reach out to us on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram, and your question could appear on Small Business Celebration, just like Jason, who asked, how do you go about raising your prices when you run a service-based business?
A lot of people don't really consider the aspects of pricing, like structure, whenever they're talking service, right? So I know a lot of companies will just do a multiplier based on somebody's pay, but that doesn't always accurately reflect like insurance costs and your office rent and vehicles. And we provide a lot of things to our employees as well. So I have vehicles, I have fuel, I have all of these, days off. I don't know, they get, health insurance and things like that. We have a cost for our overhead, we have our employee costs, we have an actual structure that we use to estimate costs. So as things go up, as insurance rates go up, we're able to adjust our rates on that particular line item.
How do you tell the customer that has been with you since the inception of Deluge that, oh, I'm sorry, our rates are going up?
So usually it's a phone call. We will also do it kind of in an email just to follow up, but typically I do a phone call because I have a personal relationship with each one of our clients. And I think that that's one of the reasons why we still continue to have the business relationships that we have, is because we have personal relationships on top of that. So explaining to them, and most of the time people don't have any concerns with it. There's very few people that are with us because we are the cheapest. So most people come to expect that quality, and they expect to be paying at least middle range for that. So whenever we have to raise our prices, then it's not really a concern.
With 22 employees, it's very easy for a business owner to go ahead and push the customers off onto the employees and say, you deal with them. And you become insulated and sometimes alienated from them. How do you maintain that relationship with all of your clients as your employee base continues to grow?
Well, we definitely don't push off our clients. So we have about 80 accounts right now. One of the things that I've recently done is focus more on business development to help me kind of keep our clients and everything, all of their needs met. But the biggest thing is I've been able to identify the tasks that I can delegate out to other employees and maintain a lot of those tasks for myself. So while they, just for a standard inspection, our clients are not reaching out to me for standard inspection stuff, but they will reach out to me whenever it's a bigger item. We maintain the relationship like that. Whenever it's a big thing, then, then I step in and I address it, or I still jump into meetings. So I still do a lot of work, but I have people that are around me that help us execute the work.
Do you still have jeans and boots in the trunk of your car to get muddy?
I don't have jeans and boots, but I do have a hard hat and vest. So I may show up in the car and not be able to get out of the car because I might still have my flip-flops on. So, but I am definitely ready to go out to a project at any point in time.
Your business has grown. You've moved how many times?
Like 10,
10
12,
times.
I don't know.
At what point did you figure out how to work on your business and not in your business?
Well, it was definitely a transition. So, and I've gone back and forth throughout the years in that transition, right? I mean, a business is ever changing. And sometimes you have more business and sometimes you have less business, and you have to kick in and start doing, making the product, right? And I think that the biggest thing that has been my success is building a team that has been able to support me and picking the right people to put them in the right positions so that they can work with me together with our clients, and they can take over some of those tasks that I was doing. Another thing is not being okay with not having absolute control over everything and trusting other people to do their jobs. So I have hired people in positions now to manage other people, and having that trust that they are going to do it in the same way that I want and the same way that I have had. And as our company continues to grow, the culture of the company is changing as well. We have a lot of new people on our team right now. So, having those little growing pains.
Sure.
But yeah, I would say that the biggest thing is being okay with trusting the people that you put in place to do their job so that they can do that.
One of the fears that business owners have is they grow and they get a staff of 20, 25, 30, and it's keeping the volume of business coming in, and that can be a rather daunting feeling. How have you been able to manage that and say, you know what, we can have 22 employees because we have enough work coming in?
Well, I do a lot of forecasting. So I focus a lot on where the next project is and when it's going to be coming down, and if we have relationships with those people, and talking with our clients to see what it looks like they're going to use us for. So I have an estimate for the next year where we're going to be. So I can feel confident with hiring people and looking, down the future. But that doesn't mean that, I feel comfortable with it all the time.
Sure.
So I feel like being a business owner, you just have to be used to being uncomfortable.
Right, yeah.
I've also had different ways that we've managed money, and I think that that's going to be the biggest thing, is having a system in place that allows you to manage money to the point where you can adjust to changes pretty quickly. That's what we put in place. So we use a profit first system, and it has been fantastic. I've used it for the past 5 years, 5-6 years. So I went from check to check and not getting a paycheck myself to, oh, okay, I'm primary. Like, we need to take care of me first.
Right.
And then manage the money in a way that's, that's allocated for operations and payroll and things like that. And that's worked successfully.
And that brings us to the Visioneer Game. This Visioneer Game is brought to you by Minimum Press of Bakersfield. Do you need yard signs, foam boards, banners, or signs on the street? Give Minimum Press of Bakersfield a call at 661-323-7757 or visit them at mmpbakersfield.com. And when you call them, ask about their 24 by 18-inch yard sign special for the month of July 2025. Give Minimum Press of Bakersfield a call at 661-323-7757 or visit them at mmpbakersfield.com today. And Visioneers, if you're not familiar with the way the game works, I have a random word generator here on my phone. I have no idea what the generator is going to create, but more importantly, neither does our guest. And our guest has to take each of 3 words that I give her and somehow associate each word with her business. Now, Sarah, you do realize that if you don't get any of these words correct, it's going to be utter devastation for the entire construction industry, and water waste management is going to go into oblivion if you don't get this right. Are you ready?
I'm ready. I'm ready.
Okay, your first word is symbol.
Symbol. We use symbols all the time on our maps to represent best management practices and what they are and where they go.
Like, where's the railroad, where the street is, those kind of symbols?
Yeah, like where the gravel bag goes or where the pile of rocks go.
Well, that's 1 for 1. Well done,
Sweet.
you. We're on to our second word, which is nursery.
Nursery. So a lot of times they will have a nursery of plants that they are trying to grow in order to replant on our projects.
Nice, that's 2 for 2. Well done. Now, it all comes down to this. If you don't get this word right, it's going to be utter devastation and oblivion for all.
Okay, all right, I'm ready.
Oh boy. Bold.
Bold. We have to be bold in our choices for best management practices, otherwise they may not work.
Nice, that's 3 for 3. The world is safe at last because of you. Since you've had this life-changing moment, who would you like to thank for all this glory that you now enjoy?
I would like to thank Jim Damien.
Really?
Yes.
And how do we know Jim Damien?
So I met Jim a little over a year ago, actually about a year and a half ago, whenever he was working for Kern County.
Yeah?
And he is now supporting me and updating some of our systems with our company. As we continue to grow, we need more systems in place to be able to continue providing good services, and he's becoming a part of that.
And that brings us to our second Visioneer question, which is also brought to you by Mike Saba, a Zillow Premier agent with Watson Realty, selling Bakersfield homes since 1992. Give Mike Saba a call at 661-203-8406 or reach him at mikesaba1@icloud.com today. Visioneer Natalie asks, we are getting out of a product-based business and into a service-based business. How did you figure out how much to charge?
Well, I identified what some other people were charging, and I kind of started there, but it was at first just kind of throwing darts at a dartboard.
Right.
Had no idea. Until I was able to systematize things. So that was the big thing, is making it repeatable, because also, like, I don't want to be the only one with the magic sauce, because then I can be the only one to do estimating.
Right.
So we broke it down into a repeatable process and treated our inspections and our services more like a product. It's a product, right? Our deliverable is the reports that we write, and it takes XYZ to create that report. So I was able to put in what it takes for us to do that, and the insurance costs, the employee time, the overhead costs, things like that. And one of the things that we do it differently than a lot of other service-based companies. Most of the other ones that I've worked for, and a lot of the ones that some of my colleagues have worked for, they break down their hours to billable hours, and they bill per hour. We don't do that. We bill per event.
Why is that?
Because it's easier. That way I don't have to worry about how much time I'm spending on site. But I bill for one event when, I estimate it takes us 5 hours, but sometimes it may take us 3, or sometimes it might take me 8. Because I want to be able to spend the time that I need to on site to get the job done the way it needs to be without being watching the clock.
How do you handle change orders?
We do a fixed rate fee, lump sum per item for inspection. And then once we get to that point where we've exhausted our budget, then we just submit for a change order. Usually we don't have to do a lot of change orders. It really kind of depends on if we have an extra wet year. We have to go out every time that it rains, before, during, and after the rain event. We have to forecast Mother Nature. So I've been doing it for 20 years, and with the experience that I have, I kind of have an idea of how much rain, how many storm events, whenever I set up our formula. So, and I've adjusted it since then.
When the client comes with a change, how do you budget for that?
That's something that you can't always budget for, but experience, just knowing what changes might come up. So we do have an hourly billing rate put into our estimates for unanticipated things. So I was talking to somebody and they're like, hey, you should put this in there. And so just from that point in time, we started adding it in. 95% of the projects don't need it, but we have that budget there for in case we need additional inspections too. And we'll typically pull from that fund if we need additional inspections. But a lot of times we don't even need that.
But putting that language in the contract for the extra hours helps keep your customer on task.
Yep, and they will also go through, and that's something that we can cut if they want us to be lean, very lean on our contracts. So we always estimate worst case scenario, because a lot of times it's sticker shock. What I do is very niche. Not a lot of people know about what I do. They don't often budget for it. A standard construction project, you're figuring $25,000 to $30,000, maybe $50,000 for my services.
And this is here in June of 2025.
Yes, so locally in Central California. So it's going to be different if you're in a higher populated area like the Bay Area or LA. That's why I figure between $20,000 and $50,000. But that's only one aspect of it. We also have BMP implementation, and whether you're doing that yourself or you're hiring a firm to do it for you, Landscape Development Inc. does it, Gothic does it. A lot of these landscaping companies will do it. I think Elite Landscaping does it as well. Whether you're doing it yourself or you're having any of these companies do it, you still have a cost. You still have to buy the materials, you have to buy the product and hire the people to do it. Budgeting another $100,000, $150,000, $200,000 for a small project is, so now you're at a couple $100,000, maybe $500,000. On these big solar projects, it's in the millions. Their budgets and wind projects, the really giant projects, the budget for environmental compliance is in the millions.
When you've looked at a project and experience has taught you, oh, well, it's supposed to take this amount of time, this amount of resources, this amount of people, and then you get into the project and a curveball comes at you and you find yourself going beyond what those billable estimated hours and labor costs are. What do you do?
There has been a lot of learning experiences that I have had. There are a lot of life lessons for me. So I have been in that situation several times. One thing that I have done was that I just dealt with it and ate the cost.
Right.
Which I think a lot of people have done, because how do you go back to your client and you tell them, well, I way underbid this.
Right.
If it's a long project though, and it's a lot of money, then, and it's something that I can't, eat that cost, then you go back to the client and have that conversation. With lessons learned now, I've had projects where we planned on doing a per day rate, right? But then those days went from 10-hour days to 16-hour days. So it was a perfect opportunity for us to readjust the way that we did things. So we do a combination of the fixed rate fee and hourly. So we still do hourly on some tasks, because there's just no way around it. Whenever you've got 16 hours that may go back to 12 hours, that may go to 24 hours.
Especially when you have to drive the Jeep 14 hours just to get to the location.
Or take a plane flight. So we've definitely have had projects. I've had projects in Idaho, Arkansas, and Texas, and Arizona, so that we have consulted on. Whenever you've got stuff where there's so many variabilities. And we try to list out everything that's included on our estimates. We try to be very clear. This includes a standard inspection of this big of a project, but then you go out there and they're like, oh yeah, by the way, that project is actually double. Then that gives us an opportunity to rebid or renegotiate pricing.
You've done the site survey. You've gone through and you've created all the plans that is needed to move the earth, and all the assessments, and the permit's been pulled, and everything's ready to go. Do you still get paid, even though they haven't moved any dirt yet? And at what point do you start and stop a project, and how's the money flow?
Yes, and that is kind of the complexity of what I do, is that we will get paid for that plan that was written 4 years before. Likely it will change. Sometimes they budget for a couple of revisions and there before the project starts, depending on the complexity of the project or if there's anything that significantly changes. But then you just sit and wait for that next part to start, and then
you wait 4 years and hope they start moving dirt.
Yeah, and you don't know if it's ever going to happen, because I've done projects where we've had asbestos in the dirt, so they had to wear respirators.
Right, they find a Mojave ground squirrel.
And then we also had mercury on the same project.
Wow.
And it was up in the mountains up north
from
of the...
when there was a mine there.
Yeah. And so you couldn't use too much water. So they ended up not proceeding with that project. But we wrote the plan several times because it was such a diverse, complex project. And then it didn't get approved.
I imagine forecasting becomes a challenge.
It does. So I forecast everything based on our consistent work, repeatable work, things that I know that we are absolutely going to have. And
such as?
Weekly inspections. So we do weekly inspections, and that's the thing that I have stayed consistently with.
And when you do weekly inspections, what do you inspect?
We inspect the project to make sure that they are complying with the state regulations and with their plan. And if there's any changes to the plan, then we notify the client, and they notify the people who wrote it, sometimes us.
Right.
Makes it a little bit more complex. And it's better to have a lot of people on your team depending on the project. So, I mean, if it's like a small project that's a couple acres, you can get by with like 1 or 2 people that are doing the planning, but if it's a 1,000 acre solar project or something, it's good to have a team.
16,000 square foot, multiple use facility. You're going to be there for a minute.
You're going to be there for a minute, yes. And we work on houses. We work with everything. So we work all lines of construction, anything that moves dirt.
It's no secret that there are a lot of business owners right now that are struggling. What do you say to let them know that the light at the end of the tunnel is not a train?
So, owning a business is hard. I've been through a lot of up and downs, and continuing to have that positive outlook can be really hard. But if you're setting everything up, you're managing your money in a way that can kind of help, and you are setting up systems and everything so that you can continue, just waiting and being patient, because every time that I've had it, the investment that I've put into the business has paid off. And I think that people just have to have that patience, and they have to get through that moment, because that moment is only one moment. It is not all of the moments.
Sarah, this has been a real treat. Thank you for joining us here on Small Business Celebration.
Thank you for having me.
And if Visioneers want to get in touch with you, how do they do that?
They can give us a call at 661-447-5839, or they can email us at office@delugeconsulting.com, or they can show up in our office. We have a selfie station that they can take a selfie at. Changes all the time. We are at 5055 California Avenue, Suite 220.
And I'll be right back with my final thought. Try your best. Do your best. Expect the bar to be low for others, but know that the sun will rise tomorrow. Try your best. Now, do your best. Expect the bar to be low for others, and know that the sun will rise tomorrow. Just about every Wednesday, I have the privilege of talking to a friend of mine whom I fondly refer to as the optimistic stoic. And he's taken a moderately successful family business and turned it into something extraordinary. And a while ago, I was whining, complaining. It seemed like every step I took forward, I was taking 2 steps backward, and I was really frustrated and whatnot. And I was venting and whining and complaining. And he very patiently listened and nodded at all the right places, until finally, when I had gotten done, he said, "You know, Michael, I felt your way too a while ago. And then I got sued. And we had to go all the way to the Supreme Court." And I couldn't help but chuckle and laugh at the irony of what he was talking about. And he said, "You know, you just have to try your best. Now, you just have to do your best. And at the same time, expect the bar to be low for others, and know that the sun will rise tomorrow." And out of all that, what did I hear? Expect the bar to be low for others. And I went, really? And he said, yes. You see, in order for people to live up to standard, especially if they're employees and vendors, you have to give them stepping stones in order to get someplace where you want them to be. If you set the bar too high, they can't cross over it. So constantly setting it low allows them to step over the bar and continue to keep stepping up to standard. And I nodded and I smiled, and then he added, "And remember, the sun will rise tomorrow." And I thought for a moment and I said, "Did you win the Supreme Court case?" And he smiled and he said, "We did. All because we tried our best. No, we did our best, set the bar low for others, and knew that the sun will rise tomorrow." I hope you enjoyed our conversation this week here on Small Business Celebration, and I hope you learned something that you can use today to grow strong and profitable business. And we'll see you here again next week when we celebrate another small business making a big breakthrough.
In order to test your water at home, there are these fancy testing kits that you can buy from Home Depot or Lowe's. They cover like 14 different contaminants: lead, mercury, hardness, pH, everything that you might want to think of. And then if you find something that's a little off, then you can always send it into a laboratory for further testing. I never drink tap water. Typically. Sometimes I do, but because I know what is in it. So I know what's in our local area. I know we have arsenic and we have other nitrogen, all these other things in our water. So, which is why I try to avoid testing my water at home. California is one of our largest produce producers, right? So we export internationally a lot of our produce, and the magic of soil and sediments to filter water is one of the reasons why our food is so good, and even though we have crappy water. And that's a problem, is we have so much arsenic in the central California. And that's what I was talking about, like that project where we had asbestos and mercury. I mean, it's up there. It's going to be in your water. Like, we are one of the worst water qualities in the United States, you know, and for having so much focus on our water quality that we still have the worst quality in the United States. I think we're one of the top 7. As somebody who works in water, I really care about water quality, but I don't know, you can't get too into the thick of things, otherwise you can't do anything or live. So I just use a basic water filter, but I've gone back and forth through all the other ones, and I've just made it my goal to never test my water. The best part about it being a women-owned business is people actually listen to me. I think it is because I'm a little bit unique from other companies. People pay attention whenever I talk. The last place you want your water to go on a construction project is off the project. So you want to keep that water on the project if you can, and if you can't, you want it to be clean whenever it leaves the site. I was on Survivor and I needed to drink water. I would try to find the water at its source coming out of rock because it's going to be the most filtered.